Charles, once again, you are coming at us from an undisclosed, actually quite sunny international location. How are you today, Charles?
Very glad to be here, and thanks for accommodating my crazy schedule. I can report where I previously was. I've now been to, it's spelled Phu, but pronounced Phuket in Thailand. I've been there now 3 times, and I stayed at the NAI and then YANG, Nanyang Marriott on Nanyang Beach. And I got to tell you, it is just superb. And I don't own stock in Marriott, and I'm thinking of actually buying some, but it's the location was very nice. It's easy to get to. It's right near the airport. Yeah, I think that's it right there. Yeah, and that's it. And fantastic restaurants. I actually had the final dinner on the beach. The prices are very reasonable, and then if you're looking at it from high up to your left, about a kilometer to the left is the little village of Nanyang, but there's a park, a state park next to the hotel, and you can walk along the beach, and the tide is it's kind of like a tidal pool, so you have to walk for quite a distance to get in the surf. But it's really very pleasant. You know, the climate was nice, and the people. One person is nicer than the next. I mean, there's just a whole can-do attitude that virtually anything is possible, and it's not absurdly expensive. So I highly recommend it if somebody needs a break and has the time to go all the way up there. The way to do it is the way I did it. You fly to Dubai, and then you fly from Dubai to Phuket, and it's not that bad a trip. So there you have it.
Awesome, Charles. There's been a lot of crazy stuff going on, you know, in New York and in the United States in general since you've been gone. We're going to be going in depth on the First Amendment Forum. People are going to be able to join us for that in just about 25 minutes on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Charles, I also want to let people know that if they're not already following you on X, formerly known as Twitter, you're on there at Charles Ortel. I'm surprised you don't have many, many more followers than this, but I guess you've kind of been taking a little bit of a break from tweeting or Xing.
Yeah, because what happened is I switched phones. I joined, I'm perhaps, they have early adopters and late adopters, and then there's me. So, I'm the latest of the late adopters. So after many years of peer pressure, including from you, not really
I didn't pressure you. I didn't even know you were doing it.
Well, no, I'm just saying you've been extolling the virtues of Apple stuff. I finally bought an Apple phone, and but I foolishly switched out of I think it was a Motorola phone before I transitioned over to the Apple. So the process of doing that, I'd forgotten all my passwords and I had to go through this laborious thing. And I haven't finished the process of getting, this account password onto this phone or whatever. So that's why I haven't been tweeting as much. But I find Twitter to be or X to be a great way to communicate. And I definitely believe that I've been suppressed. I mean, I know I was previously over 40,000, 3 years ago.
They knocked out a bunch.
Yeah, they on purpose have knocked out a bunch. And it doesn't matter. I mean, 30,000 is a lot. Would I like to be 3 million or 30 million? Of course, but who knows? I'm patient.
Now, Charles, I wanted to ask you one thing, because I know, you and I were in communication about this kind of discovery that I made after the Hunter Biden contempt hearing, where we saw this very unusual camera in the hearing room. And I went on kind of like a tweet screed here, managed to get 1 million views on this in the first 24 hours. And the thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously, if 1 million people have seen this, I was tweeting it at Congress people, and, Hunter Biden and Kevin Morris can certainly look at Twitter. And I even kind of tweeted it at Kevin Morris. So I don't know how frequently he's looking at this, but seems like they would, he was testing it in 2023. But I think they know. And the question that I wanted to ask you, Charles, we've heard that there's been this letter sent where Abby Lowell said, well, this first subpoena was illegitimate because you hadn't voted to have the impeachment. And so now if you issue us another subpoena, he'll come in. I've begun to think, Charles, that negotiation, it came up after I made that tweet. I wonder if Abby Lowell and Kevin Morris realized that they now had potential criminal liability for being complicit in contempt of Congress and said to themselves, wait a minute, we better make a deal. Or they might have even done this stunt to be able to have something where they're sort of like making this deal and let's just make this all go away and he'll come in and do the deposition. What do you think of that?
Well, I think Abby Lowell is a very bad lawyer. And he's an expensive lawyer who's willing to do and say anything to stall for time, which is what they want to do. They want to push this as close to within 60 days of the election, so that it won't be adjudicated before the election, assuming Biden remains on the ticket, which may not be safe. And it's preposterous. I mean, you don't decide as a lawyer, and Hunter doesn't decide as a citizen what is and is not legitimate coming out of the House. I mean, maybe the House made a mistake, maybe. But if you want to go down that path, then on the whole issue of January 6th, the January 6th investigation by the House was wholly illegitimate. Democrats denied the Republicans their legitimate right to name members of the minority team that were going to be on that committee. They denied them that right. And they just went ahead and said, F you don't get to name your people. We're going to decide who goes. And so the Republicans say, we're not putting anybody on, except for that idiot, Cheney. And so the whole process by which the Democrats examined, in quotes, January 6th, and actually failed to examine, they explicitly said that no inquiry into Nancy Pelosi was possible, including the role of her daughter in that, quote, stunt on January 6th, where she was filming a documentary and somehow knew in advance what was going on. None of that could be investigated. So you want to go down this path of questioning the legitimacy of the actions of a committee or subcommittee of the House, you're on very dangerous ground, I think. And so what he's doing now is trying to push this into a zone, in my opinion, where the courts have to look at it, and that takes time, and who knows how long it will take and whether it will get up to the Supreme Court. But the notion that Hunter's only going to testify if Abby Lowell decides the deposition ground rules are acceptable to his client, it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's Biden family privilege. It's crooked privilege. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And in addition to all the tweeting, Charles, I've spoken with the House Rules people. I spoke with the telephone receptionist for the Oversight Committee. And also, I've spoken many times about the contacts that I've made in Washington, D.C., including judicial assistance for all of these guys. So I made a lot of noise about that in a short period of time. And if anybody said anything to them about, hey, we got this other contempt of Congress thing here that we're looking at, here's the deal. And they've now made a deal. So we'll see what happens there. Now, because you are international right now and on such a different time zone, I think there's a lot of kind of breaking news and stuff that happened today that you might not have had a chance to look at yet. So just like we did an alternate format show earlier today where we had esteemed biological weapons expert Charles Rixey join us for a special episode with John Cullen. That was a little bit of a different format. We're going to be kind of like going over the news today and allowing you an opportunity to respond to some stuff that maybe you haven't heard about yet. So we can start that right away.
All right.
So there's a lot of stuff going on, of course, in Davos, and we've had the people from Rebel News. They're doing a great job questioning all these bozos. They really got John Kerry super worked up. But, what do you think about what's going on in Davos there, Charles?
I think it is excruciating waste of time, money, and energy. I mean, first of all, to get into Davos, I forget what the freight is, but I believe it's on the order of $40,000 to get into the meeting. and
What do you
then
mean, the
everything
ticket
is over.
to attend?
Yeah, and you can't just go. I mean, you have
What?
to be approved. Yeah, you have. Yeah, they decide whether you can go. It's just like the Clinton Global Initiative.
Wow.
Only in theory, the foundation behind Davos is an actual Swiss, I believe, foundation. In theory, I hope organized in compliance with Swiss laws and regulations. But yeah, I believe it's invitation only. And then once you get there, yeah, getting a hotel room is extremely expensive,
Right.
and then anything that you might want to eat
Mm-hmm.
is expensive. And speaking of hookers, those are expensive and apparently all sold out
That's the
already.
funniest. It's like there
Yeah.
was something. Well, yeah, they were. Where was it? They were giving you the price of hookers, and they said it's 2,000 francs for 12 hours. I'm thinking, wait a minute, you pay $40,000 to go to this meeting. Who has 12 hours to hang around with a hooker? It's crazy.
Well, I mean, actually, it's all about the parties in addition. So McKinsey throws a big party, and other people who would love to be hired by the multinational CEO types who are there. There are all kinds of parties. I believe Bloomberg gives a party, and maybe the other news organizations give parties. Then the cost of getting these anchors there, and it's basically platitudes and attitudes. It's absurd bullshit. And I should never say never, but I never will go to this horrible place. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
I've skied at Davos. That's nice. And my understanding is that the local government, they're what are called cantons throughout Switzerland, and the cantonal government hates Klaus Schwab for the disruption that this event causes. This is prime ski season right now, and you can't really ski while this event is going on, so you lose that traffic. And
Why do they let him do it?
one attendee is snobbier than the next about I need my security, I need this and that, and again, if I had any role at, let's say, at a hedge fund that had a big position in the stock of a company where one of the CEOs was going to go to Davos, I would push to have the guy fired or woman fired. I mean, this is a colossal waste of time. Nobody has appointed anybody to be in charge of a global government. This Klaus Schwab has been, I mean, he's wrong on virtually every major initiative that he comes up with is both bullshit and likely self-enriching. And he's maneuvered himself as sort of a person who's more powerful than a national leader. And in addition, he's managed somehow to get sovereign status for the World Economic Fund in gatherings like the UN and maybe even the G20 and stuff like that. This man is a diabolically evil simpleton.
What do you mean?
It should be called
Sovereign
the World
status.
Evil Forum. The World Evil Forum.
What does sovereign status for the fund mean?
Well, I believe that he is able to attend gatherings of nation states and have a seat at the table, even though he's not a nation state. And I believe, in addition, the World Economic Forum has contracts with various of these multinational bodies to provide thought, quote, leadership on different initiatives. And the guy he's full of shit, basically.
Now,
And he's
sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you see this, Charles? This is fantastic. This is not even a deep fake. This is technology that was developed by Ub Iwerks at Disney in 1952. But this guy, Damon Imani, does really funny videos where he puts himself on a green screen and then composites himself into, news interviews and various meetings. And he's just creative and clever with his editing and this simple visual effect that basically anybody can do. And so he's now cursing out Klaus Schwab, and he cuts to a scene where Schwab gets up and walks out of the room. And I saw it this morning. I thought it was hilarious, but now he's got fact checkers asking, is this video real? I mean, he's just cursing the guy out like nobody's business. It's sort of super obviously not real. Doesn't involve any kind of AI or complicated fakery. It's just funny comedy.
Yeah, I mean, so anybody who has time and cash to attend this World Economic Forum is a non-essential employee, as far as I'm concerned. I would fire anybody who attends this thing. I would deny it tax exemption in the U.S. And I would have, we have, I guess, I don't know how many new IRS agents. Anybody who's making a donation to this thing should get a full-scale audit.
That would be smart. You know, we've also been hearing, Charles, Zero Hedge had a story. They're saying that increasing psychopathic behavior is a sign that society is on the verge of breaking down. I cannot disagree with this, and we actually had a very upsetting story here in the local news. There's been increasing protests, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine protests all over New York City. The Post is reporting just earlier today that a mother and daughter were like unloading their groceries or something, and they got surrounded by an anti-Israel mob. And the little kids, they called them Nazis. And so the little kid said, "We're not Nazis, we're Jewish." And when she said that, they went nuts, started putting stickers on their car. I mean, how frightening is that for a mother and her daughter? The woman's 43. So, I mean, she's, you know, not, this is just a woman and her daughter getting surrounded by a mob. This is just insane. Death to all you, you know, I'm not even going to say this because YouTube will probably kick us off, but it's nuts.
Well, yeah, I mean, and people who are not familiar with New York City may not know that the Upper East Side is, you know, that's where rich people live. And it's outrageous. We saw it when we were filming on the streets starting in 2020, looking at the BLM riots that were characterized by the mainstream media as being mostly peaceful. And you could see fires burning and cars exploding and people throwing punches. That's mostly peaceful. And during that and after that incident, New York City's police, according to this article, were told that they have to exercise extreme patience with these rioters. And that's precisely the wrong thing to do. I mean, if you needed, you don't need, frankly, more arguments to make the case that New York City is unlivable. And it's certainly not a place to start a business or keep a business. It is not a place to visit. If you're a foreigner and you're not familiar with how New York City actually works, you stand at grave risk of being assaulted or worse, having property stolen from you. It's extremely expensive. Many of the people there are all the government workers are surly and at best unhelpful and at worst dangerous. And then you get the judicial system. You take the Trump family, who probably have contributed perhaps billions of dollars of revenue through their various businesses over the life of them in New York City and state. What do you do with him? Well, you persecute him. You know, you drive his business out of the city. You send clear examples that, you know, if you do well in New York City, you're going to be targeted because of your unfair income or wealth. You get morons like Bernie Sanders with 3 houses, you know, all in for climate change and taxing the millionaires and billionaires because, you know, that's something he can threaten to do. And then if he doesn't do it, he can get bought off one way or another, get a tip to his wife. You know, this is inmates running an asylum. And the damage that has already been done to the argument of trying to create wealth or provide incomes to people in New York City and state, that argument cannot be undone other than by a 20-year period of proof that the regulatory system and the people in the political sphere and legal sphere in New York City and state have learned an important lesson. And that it will take many, many years to turn this around, and it may not even be possible to turn it around.
Yeah. You know, I was just showing that article, Charles, that the city had agreed, there was a settlement with these rioters where they were being paid. So basically, there was a settlement where NYC agreed to pay $9,950 each to more than 1,300 protesters who were arrested during the George Floyd riots between May 28th and June 4th, 2020. What's interesting about that, Charles, is when you're talking about a period of just a few months, the starting salary for an NYPD officer is $58,580, and that's for an entire year of standing around texting and smoking cigarettes. It would be much easier to just get 10 grand to be involved in a riot. I mean, they've basically incentivized it, haven't they?
No, it's nuts. It's really nuts. And this is what happens when an educational system breaks down. This is what happens when families in the Great Society, African-American families are encouraged, you know, not to be nuclear. Incentives are put in place, perverse incentives are put in place to have women be single and not get married. They get more. I mean, it's just this is a case study in stupid, and the damage that has been done really to the most vulnerable people among us is incalculable. And you have to remember, people do have choices. And I talk about city states. New York City would be much better off as a city state than it currently is if it said, all right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to now try to compete with Dubai and Singapore. We're going to lower our taxes way down. We're going to encourage skilled people with capital to migrate into the city. We're going to make sure that our universities and schools are the best in the world. We're going to have zero tolerance on homelessness, zero tolerance on drugs, zero tolerance on crime. Repeat offenders are not going to be permitted back in the city after jail, and then you can't ever come back.
Yeah.
And but that's never going to happen in this bastion of in quotes progressive stupidity. I mean, one professor or a thought leader is dumber than the next on these issues.
Yeah, and it's even worse than that, Charles. The other thing that happened today is that the judge will not dismiss this case. He's facing, I think, second-degree manslaughter or something, Daniel Penny. So obviously, the primary thought in anybody's head right now, even if they are inclined to help someone who might be being attacked by a maniac, in addition to wondering if you would be at risk of being killed by said maniac, you got to worry about going to jail even if you prevail in the struggle with the maniac. It's really dangerous.
As I say, I mean, it's just making it, and I am voting with my feet myself, but I'm not saying this because I intend to leave. I've reached a point where I don't see a solution coming out of this team. I don't see another. I don't particularly like Mike Bloomberg, but I don't see another billionaire willing to stand up and say, all right, not only am I going to try to tackle these unions and the retirees and these crazy people who are stuck throughout the regulatory system in New York, I'm also going to base my gigantic, hugely profitable business here, and I'm also going to contribute out of my own pocket through my various foundations to try to help the truly afflicted in the city. I don't see anybody dumb enough to try to do that now.
Yeah. Switching gears, we had this is the Surgeon General of Florida has come out with a statement that there is a DNA contamination that he's concerned about in these vaccines. And he was I think it was on Tucker Carlson, he said that it's somehow, because of this whole RNA approach, that this is more dangerous than it otherwise would be. And he's talking about SV40, which is that simian virus 40 that we had Judith Vary Baker was the first person who I heard speaking about that. But again, contamination is what this guy is talking about, and he's the Surgeon General.
Yeah, I mean, this whole principle that started under COVID, and really shame on Trump, frankly, for falling for it, that suddenly a medical decision that ordinarily you would make in consultation with your personal physician if you have one, and if not at the hospital with whoever's assigned to you, and involving as much of your family as you might care to involve. The whole idea that suddenly that is going to be replaced by bureaucrats coming up for a one-size-fits-all solution for a threat that they assess as being very serious on the basis of data they refuse to share with you is absurd. And you think back, you of course suffered. How many times has Crowdsource the Truth, knocked down by YouTube? But in the heat of it, at the very beginning, you really had to think twice about expressing your views, and that's precisely the wrong place to be. I mean, with this great technology that we're using right now, the world should be a place where there's more debate and more informed discussion than ever. Instead, how much of the dogma that was shoved down our throats by the nutcase Scarf and Dr. Fraudy and those people, how much of that bullshit has now been proven to be bullshit? And how many children have been grievously harmed by the lockdown? And what will the cost to them and to society be over time? as they, I bet you they're going to be apprehensive, anxiety-ridden. They may develop severe psychiatric disorders. If they have children, what will happen to their kids? I mean, the toxic crusade that they were on, and then the demonization of people like you, and to a lesser extent me, who raised questions, valid questions, it seems now. How do we get those years back? How do we get that time back? How do and the division this caused? And suddenly, Dr. Fauci, an 80-year-old kook who's conflicted, financially conflicted, we had to every day to listen to his bullshit, and now and follow the science. And now he just, without even a care in the world, said, well, the 6 feet thing, I kind of made that up. That's unacceptable.
Pretty crazy.
Unacceptable.
For sure.
His pension should be canceled. There should be an IRS, a serious investigation into his finances and those of his wife, and all these other people who are purveying this bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and criminal charges, frankly. But Charles, we're going to continue this conversation in less than 5 minutes. People are going to be able to join us in the First Amendment Forum. Please join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. It's the most economical way to support the show. You can watch the debate from earlier today on Odyssey, even if you aren't a sponsor on there. The debate between Charles Rixey and John Cullen is free for everybody to watch on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. You can also sponsor the show on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com. And thanks to everybody